it's success then. We've
Excellent. How's your day going so far? You're in Fort Wayne, Indiana, I guess.
I'm in Fort Wayne. Yeah, I just got to the hotel about an hour ago, and yeah, I have some time to kill and be here and hang out with you guys. And yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. I know you get a busy schedule. Actually, my partner Mark is stuck in the dentist chair. So, uh,
Oh no.
yeah, I don't know what happened. He just texted me and said he's in the dentist chair. So,
Oh my gosh. I hope
better him
that
than me.
doesn't sound good, but
Oh, it doesn't sound good. So, we just want to learn about you. How did you get into this whole music?
oh my gosh. Let me grab my coffee real quick.
Okay,
I'll be right back.
absolutely.
I just realized that it just finished brewing. There we go.
Awesome.
Hotel coffee. Gosh, that's a loaded question, or that's a question with a potentially long answer, I guess.
Yeah.
But um, I started playing bass when I was 17. So I think, you know, when compared to a lot of people that I know and my colleagues, I feel like I got a little bit of a late start. But yeah, my dad always played guitar, but it was never forced upon me. But I grew up around music. I grew up going to see him play in bands and, listening to records in the living room and all that stuff. And yeah, and then when I was 17, at that time I was a really big a girlfriend of mine in high school, we were really big Guns N' Roses fans. I'm still a big Guns
Yeah.
fan.
Yeah.
But yeah, and at the time she was just like she was gonna get a guitar. I mean, it's that classic high school thing, like let's start a band. And none of us knew how to play anything. And we just start, you know, doling out jobs to people. And she was like, I'll play guitar and you should play bass because you really like Duff. And so I was like, okay, cool. And so so that Christmas, I asked my parents for a bass and which I think kind of surprised my dad. I mean, he was very, on board with that. But I have no idea why I chose bass. It just kind of was the thing that, I wanted to do. And so he and I went to, there used to be this local music shop in Austin. And of course, with all the changes that are happening, it doesn't exist anymore, sadly. But we went there and we picked it out and we basically put it on hold for me, and I got like a little old used PV amp, and that was my first bass rig, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I just kind of sat in my parents' living room and played along to CDs and records and kind of picked out the bass line, and was able to hear that for whatever reason. But yeah, and then at some point I started playing with my dad on stage, and that kind of helped me learn how to be in a band, and understand what it meant, like song structure. And, when people would use nonverbal cues on stage to, kind of signal a solo was coming. And then maybe there would be, an extended solo, and then that person's going to solo, and understanding that, the song structure could change in the moment on stage, and sort of understanding how to go with the flow with that. But, and then, yeah, I ended up in my 20s in Austin, just kind of playing in different bands and just kind of snowball effect and moving my way up the ladder in Austin. But I never went to school for music. I never took lessons. I think I took one lesson in my life from a friend of mine in Austin when I needed to learn I needed to learn a good slap technique for a song that we were doing in this band I was playing
Yeah.
in. So that was the only lesson that I took, and everything else along the way was just me, playing by ear and learning from the people I was on stage with, and learning from the bass players on the records that I was, kind of playing along to.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
um,
That's pretty crazy. You're all self-taught.
completely self-taught. Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, that's a great inspiration to kids, that want to be a musician that, you know,
Yeah.
try
Yeah.
it.
I did an interview recently for Ampeg, and it was for International Women's Day. And there was a group of us on there, and one of the women that was on the panel was Gail Ann Dorsey, and who's one of my favorite all-time bass players. She's one of my heroes. And so to get to be on this, Zoom call panel with her for Ampeg was really just this amazing, joyful thing, and getting to know her through that. And I discovered that she was also completely self-taught, which I did not know, and I had assumed otherwise. So it's kind of cool when you get to meet your heroes, and they're so accomplished. And I mean, she's played with another one of my heroes, David Bowie. And so to know that
Wow.
she was completely self-taught as well was kind of encouraging for me, even at my level, at this stage of my life. So
Yeah. Yeah, it must be pretty humbling that, you have heroes, but there are younger kids out there that look at you and say, geez, I want to
I,
be this
I,
girl. When I
I
grow
know,
up, I want to be Harmony.
which is a wild thing to think about, because we talked a lot about this that day too, that, we all probably, all of us creatives and artists, and maybe anybody who's human suffers from that imposter syndrome, and I definitely have it. That sort of, how did I get here? When are they going to find out that I don't know what I'm doing? And so to hear that people, potentially younger girls or younger players in general might go, wow, I want to be like her, is amazing. And it's so humbling. And then I'm like, wow, I guess I am at this place, and I have reached this level in my career. And sometimes I don't know how I got here, even when I look back through my
Mhm.
past, but it's amazing. I
Well,
feel very lucky.
yeah. Well, for our listeners, this is Harmony Kelley, and we haven't told them who you play for yet.
Oh man.
So who do you currently play for?
So I play for Kenny Chesney, who, if you don't know anything about country music, you may have heard that name before, but I feel like, Kenny's been around for a really long time, and he's kind of been doing it for 20 something years. So I feel like in a lot of ways, he's kind of becoming this legacy, country act. And I say country, and then even now when we're playing gigs, it's more of like a kind of just being in a rock and roll band, and it's kind of got this beachy, laid back vibe sometimes. And then other times we've got this like wall of electric guitars, So yeah, it's really cool. He's great. I have been in the band. I did my first tour with him in 2015. So it's been about 8 years. I
Yeah,
auditioned in 2014. So yeah, it's wild to think about that. I know COVID was an interesting time, obviously. So that was a strange time warp. But yeah, about 8 years I've been doing this with him, which has been
that's
amazing.
cool. That's
Yeah.
cool. In your wildest dreams, when you auditioned with them, did you even have an inkling that you had a shot at it?
No, I mean, I got I so I'm from Austin, Texas originally. And that's kind of where I learned, I cut my teeth in music and bands playing in Austin. And then at some point I moved to Nashville because I got an opportunity to kind of sub a gig for a really good friend of mine, and get my foot in the door. And so, because I've always been thinking about moving to Nashville, but it's one of those, it can be very intimidating. And if you don't know a lot of people or have a gig that you're going towards, it's a really daunting thought to just move to Nashville and go, I'm going to try to make it. So I had an in, and that gig ended up not panning out, kind of a blessing in disguise. But I stayed in Nashville, and, I started meeting a lot of people, and I played a lot of gigs. And then at some point, a few years later, that same friend who was kind of the reason why I was able to move to Nashville, she a good friend of hers is in the band. And at the time, nobody really knew me. I mean, Nashville, you have to kind of get to know people. And there's a lot of people that have been there for a really long time, just trying to sort of break through, whether it's in the live scene or the session scene, which are kind of two very different worlds, but they can kind of intersect. But um, and so she had gotten a call to audition. And she was at the time growing her family with her husband, and they were, I think, pregnant with their second baby. And she really wasn't wanting to. She's a fantastic bass player and songwriter and singer and multi-instrumentalist. And she just wasn't really looking to be on the road anymore. And she was more looking to be in the studio. And she ended up going on to, start producing records and things like that. So she basically said, you guys need to call my friend Harmony to audition for this, because I think, she would be really great and she'd be perfect, and she's in Nashville, and, nobody had heard of my name, there in that world. So, so it's one of those things, like, I wouldn't say, so for a long time, I would say, oh, she was the reason why I got this gig. But truthfully, she was the reason why I got called to do the audition. And then the rest was up to me, so, but I had never been in a traditional Nashville audition before, and I was very nervous. And at first I thought, our band leader said, yeah, it's going to be really low key. Here are the 6 songs, and they involved some background vocal stuff as well. And so just learn these, and we'll have you come in and do this. It'll just be low key with the band, and all this stuff. And when I listen to the songs, you start to realize really quickly, like, oh, much like a lot of more modern country, a lot of these were played on a 5-string bass. And that's not something that I had a ton of experience with. I've always been a 4-string player. I'm a very I think of myself as more of a meat and potatoes, bass player. Yeah. Not a lot of effects, and 4 strings, and that was it. And so I was like, okay, well, I feel like if I'm going to show up and do this audition justice and do these songs justice, I'm going to kind of need to get comfortable with the 5-string bass. And so a couple of weeks before the audition, I borrowed one from a friend of mine just to kind of get comfortable with it. And then for the audition, I actually went to rent a 5-string bass from SIR in Nashville. And so I showed up to the audition with a bass that I wasn't 100% comfortable with, to just play these songs, and pretended like I had played it my entire life, because that's what you have to do, and then I got there, and our monitor engineer said, do you have your own in-ear monitors? And I said, no, I didn't even own in-ear monitors yet. I was coming from Austin, which is a very club-based gig town, and so I had no experience with any of this. So I immediately got nervous, and he was like, it's totally fine. He said, we've got these in-ears that are generics. And so, they make the in-ears with these little things on the end that you can kind of squeeze them into your ear. But I mean, they don't really fit well because they're not molded to you. And so I was up there for this audition, and they were recording it. Kenny wasn't there that day. Somebody had a phone, and they were recording it video to send to him of all the auditions. And I think there were 4 or 5 of us that were auditioning, and I didn't meet any of the other people who were auditioning. And so they're recording it. I've got this 5-string bass that I'm really not comfortable on. I've got to sing and play bass, and I'm trying to show up and not use any charts, and so memorize all that. And I've got these in-ears in, which I'm not comfortable with the whole concept of in-ear monitors anyway. And then they keep falling out. So the whole thing, to me, it was like all signs are pointing to, there's no way that I'm going to get this gig.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. And then, so it was really like a testament to what they were looking for. Because even before I got called into audition, the band leader and a few of the other guys from the band said, hey, we want to meet you for lunch. And so they met me, and I realized that almost more important than my skills as a bass player, and how comfortable I was with this big world of touring, and how many notes I could play, and how much music theory I knew, like, so much more important than any of that was just sort of me as a human being. Yeah. And who I was, and what I brought to the table in that way. And obviously, you can't get up there and be, terrible or awful, but I didn't go to Berkeley. I hadn't taken all the lessons. I hadn't been on a million big stages. I hadn't played football stadiums. I had never worn in-ears, like all this stuff, but it was like, we want you. And I was like, are you sure?
So that little meeting, that luncheon or whatever, was more like an interview.
Yeah, which I didn't, at the end, I mean, and he was very clear. He's like, because at the time I was replacing somebody who had been in the band for about 20 years. And so there's not a lot of turnover in this band or in this crew in general. I mean, a lot of the guitar techs and the lighting crew people and audio and video and band members, like they've really been around for a really, really long time. And Kenny kind of cultivates that familial um, vibe on the road. And so that was really important to them, that I was going to be able to seamlessly mesh into their world, which I respected. And I still do now, having been in the band for 8 years, it makes sense to me. I really get it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. As an outsider looking in, it looks like you guys are having fun.
we are.
It just looks like a blast. I mean, you and Kenny seem to, really hit it off well, stage antics and so forth. And
Yeah. Yeah. We all vibe together really well. And the band, I mean, we really do all get along. We have a couple of new members as of last year. And they also replaced a couple of people who had been in the band for 20 something years, so it's but now, and it's, so that part's really bittersweet, but yeah, we're all we've got this little family, and we hang out together. And when we have days off, and Kenny's really good about that too, just that if we were to, as a crew, like last year, we had a couple of days off in Lake Tahoe, we had a day off in Boise, Idaho. And when we were in Boise, they arranged like a crew rafting trip for us to all go on. And so it's just like that sort of team spirit and camaraderie is really important to them, because they understand, and he understands, that it just kind of makes the whole thing operate, and that vibe that he's going for, it really, they're making that happen every day with the way that they treat this whole tour. So yeah, we have a ton of fun. I mean, we love everybody. I mean, everybody on this, I mean, it really is he always says that, this is my road family. And it really is. I mean, there's no separation between the band and the, other departments, where, the band is held up on this pedestal and you're not really allowed to, socialize. I mean, that's so not what this tour is about. If you go into the catering room at any of these venues, you'll see a big table with, a couple of band members, maybe a guitar tech, a couple of lighting guys, maybe a video guy. It's just like we really, and then from the opening band, we hang out with their band and their crew, and we all know each other, so it's just really this cool little melting pot of people,
That is cool. And everybody that's involved is just as important as the other, although the musicians are the ones that are highlighted, but none of that would happen without all of the other people behind the scenes.
I don't know I mean, I feel a little guilty, because, we get to go up on stage and there's all this glory, and, the lights and the people, the fans, and everybody knows who we are. But truthfully, in so many ways, like there's everyone else on the crew works so much harder than we do. And so there's a little bit of that, oh God, I feel bad. Like we're taking the credit for all this amazing work, and when we play football stadiums, like last year we played football stadiums. This year we're doing arenas in different markets. We're hitting some different places that we haven't been in a while. But, when we would roll into a football stadium, there's a whole steel team that gets there, a week before we do, to build the structure, to build the actual steel structure that the stage is on, because it's not just there in a football stadium. Right. So it's like those guys and gals work really hard, and then all the, the crew and techs and the lighting people that are the riggers that hang the trusses. And and it's also like we're entrusting our safety to all those people that set up the structure that we're, running around on. So everybody's important,
Right.
So yeah.
Well, that's cool that you appreciate everyone that you work with.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And like you said, you guys are like a family. You even had, 30,000 of your closest friends sing happy birthday to you.
I did. I did. That is a very surreal experience, by the way. I don't know if any of your listeners have ever had that. Probably not. I had not had that happen. Yeah, this year we were in Greensboro when it was my birthday. And my birthday is April 29th. And so whenever if your birthday falls on an actual show day, not the day before, not the day after. If your birthday happens to be on a day when we're playing a show, whether you're a crew member, a band member, whoever on the crew, if it's your birthday on that day, Kenny brings you out, they get a cake, they have this big margarita in this obscenely large glass. And, he stops the show in the middle and brings that person up. And, everybody in the entire place sings happy birthday to that person, and then they take a drink of the margarita, and it's this whole thing. And it's another one of those, like, he doesn't have to do anything like that, but it really is, it's such a cool family. And then it's also, I feel like you're letting the fans in on this little kind of behind the scenes moment. Like, you feel like you maybe get to know people a little bit better, to share in those experiences, which is so neat.
That
So
is neat. Sounds like a lot of fun. And he does, you guys go down to the Virgin Islands every now and then? Do you ever?
every now and then we do. So yeah, he's taken us down there before. And I remember the first time I got to go, I couldn't believe it, just like being able to go there and experience that. We usually take a day and go out on a couple of catamarans, and we would go over to Yost Van Dyke. And then the last time we went, we just kind of went to this little private beach area and had lunch over there and swam and snorkeled, and just kind of wander around town. And he's been going over there, I think, for like 20 years or something like that. So yeah, it's amazing for him to want to share that with his people, and just
Right.
take us all, everybody over there, everyone's significant other, and have this 6-7 day kind of trip to the beach after the tour, to just kind of like wind down and celebrate, and you know
Yeah.
celebrate this amazing tour that we just had. So
Well, the tour life isn't easy, especially, if you have a family.
yeah.
It's nice to be able to take your family with you and,
Yeah.
share those moments with everyone.
Yeah, and sometimes it works out that like this weekend, after today, we're going back to Nashville, and then we're playing in Evansville, Indiana, which is just a few hours away from Nashville. So a couple of the guys are going to bring their kiddos with us on the bus. They're little guys, which is really cool, and they're old enough to kind of have awareness. And we've met, obviously we know everybody's children and stuff. So for them, it's a very family atmosphere. So for them to be able to bring their kids on the bus for like an overnight bus ride, and then to be able to, have the day at the venue, is a really cool experience to share with your kiddos. So yeah.
That's fun. So not only Kenny Chesney, but you've, toured with some other big names, Hank Williams Jr., Louise Mandrell.
Yes, we did some stuff with Louise a few years ago, and we recorded with her, and we did some theater shows with her. A few of the guys in the band, we did that with her, which was really, she's a special gal. Yeah,
She's iconic for sure.
she is. Yeah, she is.
And you had mentioned earlier that studio musician and touring musician are two completely different things, but you do both, I believe, correct?
I do. I would say in Nashville, it's more, it seems like there's more of a separation. I mean, there's definitely like, and I just think that there's all our guys that are out with us here. They do both. But when we're on tour, we're gone quite a bit, and so it's hard to. I think there's that risk of once you start saying no to studio sessions because you're out on the road, that they just kind of assume that you're always gone, and so they're going to end up calling other people. But and I like when we're off the road, we're done with this tour at the end of this month, actually. we, aside from some one-offs and some festival stuff that just got added. But I'll go back to Austin, and I've already started to get some gigs lined up, and some session stuff will come along as well. But I feel like in Nashville in particular, that's a session scene that I never really broke into, because primarily I was always on the road. So I think it's harder to break into that if you're always gone. But I think some of these guys in the band that also do that when we come home, they've just been doing it for so long that they already kind of have a relationship with some producers and studios, and they will continue to get called. But yeah, so there is overlap. And then I think there's a lot of guys that do sessions in Nashville in particular that don't really want to, they're kind of over the touring thing, and they just kind of would rather be at home. And so that's kind of the choice that they make, to be in Nashville and be with their families, and, do sessions like a kind of like a day job, be able to work Monday through Friday and come home and have their weekends available to them. And yeah, so it's just kind of a different lifestyle. So
I got you. I got you. That makes sense totally. So when you were a little girl, were you into music like a little girl, or did you know as a child that you were going to be a musician?
no, 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 I had no idea. That's why it's so weird for me, because, and there's a lot of people I know that, started playing, their parents put them in piano lessons when they were, 6 or 8 or something, or or violin or something. Like I wasn't even in band in school, middle school. I think I was in choir one time in 6th grade, but I never was even in band in high school. So even as a little girl, my parents were always listening to music, and my dad was always playing in bands, but it never occurred to me until I hit that moment in high school that that was something that I wanted to do. Um, and so I don't know if it's like years of growing up listening to what my dad was listening to, because my dad was listening to really sort of rhythm section based music, in my opinion. He was a huge Beatles fan, and so the Beatles, Little Feat, the band, Taj Mahal, these are all the, like, Rolling Stones. These are the bands that my dad was listening to. These are the records that I grew up with, like from a little kid. And so to me, those are all really drum and based kind of based songs, and bands. And so I guess maybe my ear got used to hearing that. And so when I don't know, it's really hard to say, because I
Yeah.
never was a little girl going, I want to play music for a living. And in fact, even after I was playing bass in high school, I went off to do this thing called AmeriCorps. And I lived in California for about 10 months right after I graduated high school. And then when I came back, I started going to the University of Texas in Austin, and I didn't study music. I had no desire to study music. I ended up studying in the College of Communication. I studied radio, television, and film, so I have a degree in that. And I really wanted to go into production. I wanted to work on films and TV, and what I later really started to enjoy was video editing. And I still love that. And in fact, if I was going to, kind of continue on with that, or make that more of a secondary career, I really kind of want to get my video editing chops up again, because I always really loved that. So even after I had already started playing bass, I wasn't, I wasn't going to school for any of that. And I was still kind of unsure of where it was going to take me.
But you were always interested in the entertainment business.
Apparently, yeah, I guess there was something about that. So maybe it was seeing my dad play guitar and me in bands. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I was always interested in doing something in the umbrella of entertainment,
Mhm. Mhm. And is there an idol that you have out there, a musician that really has inspired you over the years?
I mean, honestly, I mean, it's hard because there are bass players that I really, really love. I mean, James Jamerson to me is just like one of the greatest. Just what he chose, the way that he played, the style that he played, very melodic, interesting bass lines that, if I were to try to play that, it would probably sound busy, but for whatever reason, he was able to sort of make it make sense. I'm a really big Pino Palladino fan. I'm a really big Justin Meldal Johnson fan. And he played with Beck a lot, and and now we're kind of colleagues or acquaintances. I'm on this text thread with him and a bunch of other bass players from LA, which is very surreal also to sort of be included in this group of bass players who are like, to me, we're always like at this upper level. But I remember seeing him play with Beck in Austin, maybe 18 years ago or something. And I had always been a real purist, like bass player, like meat and potatoes. Like I play with my fingers. I play a 4-string. I don't use a pick. I don't really use pedals. I don't like a bass should sound like a bass and, all this stuff. But then when I saw him play, I realized he was doing all this stuff. It just had all these techniques. He was playing with a pick. He was playing different kinds of basses, active and passive pickups. He was, playing, he was slapping. He was playing with his thumb and palm muting. He was using all these wacky effects, but it was never overkill. It was always so perfect for the song. And that changed my mind about, the approach to bass and how it could fit in a song and not be distracting, but just be additive, even if you're playing with all this different stuff. So I've always been a really big fan of his, but I'm just like artists who I love. I mean, I'm a really big David Bowie. I've been a fan forever, and Prince. Those are
Oh
probably
God.
my two favorite artists, musicians that and those guys could also play anything. I mean, I saw Prince in Austin in like 94, 93 or something. And I think he played every instrument and just was incredible at every one that he picked up. So
That guy was crazy. He was
yeah,
incredible at everything he touched.
he really was. Yeah. Magical person. So yeah, but I mean, I like all music really. I mean, I know it's so funny that I ended up to me playing in this country band. I mean, I'm from Texas, so obviously I grew up listening to old country and I appreciate country and but I really am more of a kind of R&B and soul. And I mean, I listened to metal in high school. I like 90s hip hop. I mean, I really listened to everything.
Right. So you were kind of into every genre, and
Yeah.
that probably added to your, diversity in music.
Maybe so. Yeah. I mean, because I grew up listening to all kinds of stuff. And then when I was able to choose, I went back to a lot of stuff that my dad, it's funny when I was able to go out and buy my own CDs and even as adult, like buying vinyl now, I'm realizing I'm buying a lot of stuff that my dad used to play when I was a kid. I'm like, oh, wow, I never thought that I would go buy that Ry Cooder record that my dad was listening to when I was a little kid. Now I'm like, oh, I love that. So it's just funny how that comes back around. But yeah, I listen to everything really.
That's great. So for our listeners, again, we're talking to Harmony Kelley. And if you go to harmonikelley.com, it's HARMONIKELLEY.com, you can find out where she's going to be playing, or you can follow her on Kenny Chesney and find out what's going on there. So we can always follow you and find out where you're going to be and what you're up to.
Yeah, and I try to do a good job of especially on my Instagram page. I try to, do a lot of behind the scenes videos and photos and, kind of take a little almost video diary of, our days off or show days or backstage or, all that stuff just because I feel like you don't know what it really is like unless you're out here. So it's kind of cool to be able to share that with people.
It is. Thank you for, sharing that, because everyone doesn't know what goes on.
Right.
And that's what people like. They like what they don't have access to.
That's true. That's true.
So that's why we, enjoy what we do in talking with the musicians and, just doing our thing.
Yeah, yeah. I love it. I mean, and especially for the people who are fans of the artists that I happen to play with, even if you buy tickets to a show, you don't get to see, all the shenanigans. I always call them shenanigans because that's what they are that go on, backstage and behind the scenes. So it's kind of cool to share that.
And you mentioned your fans or fans of the bands. You guys have like a crazy following. Like there's this group on, I think it's on Instagram. It is called Welcome to the Sandbar. And they have some cool stuff. They, always are updating people and, showing some different video clips and some great photos. And, those people are really into it.
Kenny's fans are are some of the most, loyal and energetic fans that I've ever been around. And so his fan club or his fan group, I guess, they're officially called No Shoes Nation. So, because he's got this, it's very beachy, pirate, flip flops kind of vibe. But yeah, they're awesome, and they show up and they tailgate and they I mean it's really amazing, and there's this incredible camaraderie between all of them. So if you're a fan of his and you go to a city to see him and you don't know anybody, you will make 100 friends by the time the night is over because everybody's just so welcoming to everybody else. It's like this neat little club. And so yeah, there's all these groups that where people share, oh, I went to this show, so I'm going to share this video for everybody who wasn't able to be there that day. It's really cool.
It really is.
It's special. Yeah.
I did have an interaction years ago with Kenny.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, it was a very interesting story. We were in Foxborough, Massachusetts, to his concert. I was there with a girl, and I wore a replica of his high school football jersey.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I gotta say, I knew his music, but I didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
So I'm walking through the parking lot, a couple beers deep, and a golf cart pulls up to me, and the guy looks at me and he goes, "Hey, I love that shirt," and it was Kenny Chesney.
That's so great.
Yeah, he was cruising through, talking to the fans out in the parking lot, and I'm like, "Wow, this dude's pretty cool."
I love it. He's really cool. I have people ask me that all the time, like, what's he like? Or, is he as cool and down to earth as he seems like he would be? Because, you see all these videos and interviews and he seems like he's this really super cool, down to earth, laid back guy. And he really is. That's the funny thing. I didn't know, my impression of like a superstar was someone like Prince or, someone like that, where it's like, so when I got this gig, I wasn't sure how much interaction I would in the band that I would be able to have with him. Like maybe I'm not allowed to talk to him, or maybe, the band, we do our own thing. We go on stage and we play, but then we don't really hang out with him. And it could not be farther from the truth. He's always around, and he's he hangs out, and he'll periodically I'll get random texts from him about something, and he always sends me like a Merry Christmas or Happy Birthday, or all the, I mean he's just a normal human being, and I think that's what people forget. It's like at that level they're really, I mean, they're still humans, and
Right.
some people choose to let that stardom change them into something else, but he's like the coolest guy. So
That makes him even more likable to have someone that's so close to him, talk about him on that level.
he's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I pinch myself sometimes because I was talking to one of our riggers, also lives in Austin, and we fly in and out together a lot. And so we flew into Nashville last night, and we were killing time before we had to get on the bus. And so he and I went and grabbed dinner, and we were talking about that very thing. It's like, I never want to take this for granted, and I always want to be humbled by it, because I feel so lucky and grateful that my first huge gig ever, I mean, some people never even get this opportunity, but that I got this opportunity to play for 60,000 people at a football stadium. And the bonus is that my boss is this really great person. You know, he's really, really cool. And he's also down to earth, and he's very loyal to his people. And yeah, so I just feel like I really lucked out in that way.
Well, I think he lucked out also getting you.
Yeah, thank you. I like to think so, but you know, yeah, I think you're right.
Awesome. Before we go, do you want to tell us a fun fact about you that most fans wouldn't know?
A fun fact about me that most fans wouldn't know. I mean, the first one that I can think of is that that I can juggle
Wow.
really well. That's one thing that that's for whatever reason, the first thing that came to mind.
So do you entertain the band in between sets and juggle back there and stuff?
So I should do that. I was doing it on the bus. We had some like a bowl full of like oranges or something. And so I may have had a couple of glasses of wine when this happened, but uh,
Sometimes that happens sometimes.
yeah, I can juggle. I adopted 2 cats during COVID. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think of other fun I mean, I told you that I have a degree in radio, television, and film. That's something that not a lot of people know if you don't know me. Um, gosh, I'm from a really, really tiny town in Northeast Texas. Like it's a very small, much like Kenny. I am from a small town. I'm from my hometown, I think is maybe 2,000 people. So yeah, there's some multiple fun facts for you guys.